There is no doubt the world is facing daunting challenges these days. Look around. We have reached a critical point in human history. Old leadership models, beliefs, and behaviors are no longer working. Centuries of emasculation have brought us to the brink. Men need help, and who better to help us but the women? This is Well, the Women's Expressions on Leadership, Learning, and Liberty podcast show, and I'm its host, John Crotet. My guests are accomplished and intelligent women who share not only their personal stories, but give us valuable insights and perspectives on the leadership challenges men face. In a world still dominated primarily by men, these honest perspectives can be a genuine catalyst for male leadership improvement. By exploring possibilities and opportunities for self-improvement and transformation, we offer men hope in an ever-changing, fast-paced, complex world. Thank you for listening and for your support. Lead on. I'm super excited for this episode of Well. It's taken us a while for Davidica and me to get here. A lot of things have come up, and we know how chaotic things can be, and they're dealing with a family issue that's very close to her heart. So completely understand. But anyhow, she's here, and we're grateful. On this episode, who we have is Davidica Little Spotted Horse, who lives right on the Pine Ridge Reservation up in the Dakotas. And she's got an interesting story to tell, and she's got some great wisdom that can help us. I'm going to start out with a few things about her, and then I'm going to read you something in her own words, and then we'll just get started because you're not here to listen to me. You want to hear her story. So Davidica is a singer-songwriter. And like I said, she's from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. She describes her lyrics in 3 words: heartfelt, personal, and passionate. Her songs are about love. We know we need more of that. Loss, and we've had a lot of loss. Hope and happiness. And she believes that all humans deal with these same feelings, and I agree with her 110%. Davidica's songs are about her own life. She's going to tell us later on how we can go somewhere to listen to them. However, she did co-write 2 songs with her brother about his struggles. And in their co-written song, Aaron's Song, it was written for his best friend, Aaron Lakota. And it's a gift for being such an important part of their family and to voice what he was going through at the time that the song was written. Now, in her own words, in Davidica's own words, here we go before we get started. I am a singer, songwriter first and foremost. I just happen to be native. But more than anything, I am a human being. So I humbly give all of my songs to humanity, no matter what your race, because we can all relate to the human condition, life. I've always had a dream I would leave something behind to make my mark in history for my future descendants. My music is my gift to them. My children are my biggest supporters. I cherish my children, my extended family, and my friends every day. Pila Mia. That's her native language of Lakota, which means thank you. And I thank you, Davidica, for being here today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, it is good to be here. And so let's just get started. We have busy days going on, and I know you've got things that you need to do today as well. But, tell us a little bit about you and your family growing up on the reservation. What was that like?
Actually, so I was born and raised here until I was 6. And then from 6 until 17, I was actually in Colorado. And my father and my mother raised me traditional. And when I was in Colorado, I ended up being put into the foster system for 6 years. and my mom fought and got all of her children back. And then uh, when in my teenage years, I was actually a pretty bad teen. I was a juvenile delinquent and got in a lot of trouble. It had nothing to do with like drinking or drugs or anything like that, but definitely getting into trouble and ended up being in prison for a year. And, you know, while I was there, the only thing I remember promising is when I got out, I would never go back and I would never make those mistakes again. And so when we got out, my mom did take me to ceremony. And then we moved back to the res when I was 17. We came back here. And I'm 49 now, and we've been here ever since. So live the rest, after my teenage years here. And, being born here already still had a presence when I came back. Everybody remembered me. And we always came back since I was like 12 every summer for Sundance and for ceremony, because this is where we have ceremony. So this is where we come to. And I had a little bit of a different experience because my family is traditional. And being in a traditional family, it's a little more supportive. And the family members, we take care of each other. So there's a lot of, I don't know how you would say that, but like Tioshbai, like families connected to families, and even where we live and where we hang out, and the ceremonies we do together, our daily life is intertwined with each other. So all of our extended families, we all just take care of each other and help each other in the community also.
I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad you made those important decisions to never go back. I think we've got some similar traits. I'm not going to go there, but I was kind of a hellraiser too, and not sure what that was all about. But I had my brushes with the law as well. Um, Tell me what the traditional means to you and the family, and a little bit about the ceremony, because a lot of people that might listen to the show might not understand Lakota
Okay.
traditions and ceremony. Tell us a little bit about that, Davidica.
Well, in when I say traditional, I mean in Lakota, according to Lakota spirituality. And in Lakota way, our spirituality is intertwined with all of our life. We live our life in such a way where we follow our traditional values, and our four main values are respect, wisdom, courage, and generosity. But like the true meaning of those things,
Mhm.
uh, not the, I guess, non-native meaning of those things. True respect, giving people respect always. Not, they don't have to earn it. You're just giving them. You give it to them, unless they give you a reason not to respect them. So, and the true meaning of generosity, which is to give without wanting anything back or expecting anything back. You just give. And wisdom, knowing that you don't know everything, but you're going to learn. You're going to gather that knowledge, gather that information, and then of course, wisdom, courage, generosity, and courage. And courage is to be able to do what you need to do, do the right things no matter what, because it takes courage even to admit when you're wrong. So courage is a huge, huge thing, not to be um, confused with bravery. Bravery is doing things to fight fear, and courage is doing things even in the presence of fear, doing the right thing anyway. So those four main values, they say in Lakota way, if you use those values and go back to them with any decision you make, small to large, then you're always living your life in a good way. So being traditional is adhering to our traditional um, philosophies, our traditional teachings, and our spirituality. And like I said, it's very different. Where our spirituality in Lakota way, we intertwine it in everything, and it's a part of everything, even our education, even our political system, everything. Our spirituality is part of all of it. We don't separate it, and because we believe that our spirituality gives us the strength and the knowledge, and like I said, and the courage and the wisdom to make good decisions in every part of our life. So being traditional is a mentality, and a lot of people confuse being traditional with culture, our spirituality with culture. Um, just because you wear feathers or dress in buckskin or regalia, or walk around with your hair long, that doesn't make you traditional. Traditional is a mentality and a way of being and a state of being. So my family, we are traditional. Myself, I've never been exposed to like Christianity or those kind of teachings. And my generation, thankfully, is the first generation that was not forced assimilation, not forced religion or forced boarding school or anything like that, because of my father, who is in AIM, and my mother and the family who's traditional, fighting for those traditional rights. So I'm
Well,
really
no,
proud
no.
that.
I'm glad you described it that way because it is an education, and what I gather is that it becomes part of your whole your whole core value set,
Mhm,
and your foundation of yourself as a being. And
mhm,
we all know that when something's forced upon you, that it's not necessarily part, or it has more difficulty seeping in, I think. And I think that when cultures or people, and it happened throughout the centuries, are forced to do things, it almost takes their spirit away. And not even almost, it takes their spirit away. We were talking earlier, and I was fortunate to be in a ceremony, the sweat lodge, with a Lakota warrior who served the United States of America as a fighter pilot in Vietnam. And he was traditional from the way you describe it. And now, I wish he was still with us. He's gone, but now I understand even more 15 years later what he was trying to tell me and tell us who were in the sweat lodge. So, you mentioned a Sundance, and I know
mhm.
that, I've heard a lot about it. I've never been to one. Can you describe what the Sundance is, and why it's practiced?
The Sundance is our most sacred ceremony. We have 7 sacred ceremonies in our tradition, and it's the most sacred. It's a time where we spend 4 days fasting and dancing and singing and being in a complete state of prayer for 4 days. The sun dancer will be um, with the Sundance family in from morning, from sunrise to sunset. They'll be dancing, and it's hard for people to understand when they're not traditional, or they're not I don't know how to say it, but not Lakota. They're like, they think it's an endurance test or a physicality, and it's
Mm.
really not. It's not. When you're in the arbor, when you're at the Sundance and in the arbor, in that circle, you're in a complete state of prayer, and prayer for everybody, prayer for every single thing on this planet. And I think this is why when we're taught about the Sundance, they tell you when you're in the Sundance, it's the sun dancers that keep our balance in this universe, in this I don't know how you would say, state of being as human beings. The sun dancers make those sacrifices for us so that we will live, so we will continue as a people, so that we continue as a race. And I'm not talking about just natives, but as human beings. They go in there and they sacrifice those 4 days, fasting and dancing and praying, and almost being, and I don't want to go into every single detail, but being in a different state of being, a different presence on this earth, because they're in the sacred space that we've made for them. And so that's what they talk about, especially in some of the Sundance songs. They'll say, I suffer for my people so they will live. So that is our most sacred ceremony.
Well, thank you for
And
that.
not everybody is a sun dancer, by the way. I know a lot of times too, people are like, "Oh, I want to dance. I want to dance," because they think of it as an endurance test, or I don't know exactly what they think of it, but it's not. To Sundance, even back in the old days before Europeans came here, we used to only have one Sundance a year, and it was at Peshla. And all of the Ocheti Shakwe, which means all the bands, because we have 7 bands of Lakota and Dakota and Nakota, all of our people would come together in one spot in the Black Hills and have one Sundance a year, because not everybody sundances. You have to be called to it, and there has to be a reason to sundance, because you have to live your life in a sacred way. When you're sundancing, you have to live your life differently than you would when you weren't sundancing. There's so many different, like, I guess, stipulations, kind of, or um, protocols. I guess not stipulation, but protocols. Once you're a sundancer, you can't be in an angry state or a negative state. You're not allowed to be hitting anyone or fighting or arguing. Like, you have to be in a complete state of positive being. And while you're, a lot of times sundancers will do a commitment of 4 years, is actually the minimum. So you make a commitment of 4 years. So for those 4 years, you have to be in this different state of being, in a sacred state of being. And so it's a big commitment. It's huge. So not everybody sundances, but the ones who do, we're super grateful for.
I appreciate your description, because what I think is that it's a direct, you said, sacred way of being. It's a spiritual connection to something greater than ourselves. And we look around the world today, and we can say, I know we can agree that there's a great the spirituality and a connection to, and you mentioned, all peoples, is missing on so many different levels. We've, for whatever reason, I personally think that greed is like, for whatever, that it's not just money, but just being greedy in itself for money, land, whatever we're greedy for, is not a good thing for any of us. And appreciate your description. So we talk about anger, and we talk about loss of spirit. And the reason why we did this show to begin with is to help men to be better men. When you were a younger person and rebellious, or whatever you were doing, or even with your family, what did you learn about boys? What was your vision or perception of boys and men in general as a young woman, young girl?
Well, I think because I was raised traditional, we have a little bit of a different outlook on men and boys. When we're young, they don't. We have, I don't know how to explain. Like, when we're young as a traditional person, we're taught things that, like, the women should know this and the men should know this. We're already being taught that when we're young, and because we're a generational thinking people. I don't know if you understand that, but we think generations ahead. When we have our children, we're thinking of our grandchildren. So we're raising our children to be good parents, to be good grandmothers, and to be good people. So once they're good people, they're good parents, because we're thinking of continuing our line, our lineage. So when I was young, I know that the men in my life, especially my uncles and my cousins, they were amazing people. So I had really good male role models in my life. And my father died when I was 16, and my mother and him divorced when I was young. But I stayed with him until I was 6, and the family took care of me in a traditional way, because we believe that until a child is around 6 or 7, that's when the most important teachings are taught to a child. And my mother was going to college in Boulder, so my dad asked to keep me until then, so they could instill the traditional values and morals, stories, those kind of teachings. And then he would let her have me or keep me or whatever. And so that's what happened. So he did keep me then. And my mom's family here on the reservation, my dad's family here on the reservation, made sure that I, knew about my language. I spoke my language, and the songs and my ceremonies. And I was really young, but I still learned all those teachings, and about courage, and even how to stand up for myself. I was super young, but my dad was a Vietnam vet, by the way, and he did 2 tours. And so he made sure that I knew how to even fight. So it was, it was different for me, because I had a lot of positive male role models. My father is very protective of me. He was not mean to me. My grandpas adored me. And to me, I do believe that there is a difference between someone who was raised to be told they couldn't do things, and someone who was raised to be told they could do anything. And honestly, the men in my life, especially, like I said, my father's, my grandpa's, my mom's father, my my grandpa John around him, who's a medicine man, who was one of my mentors. I have a lot of male mentors, and they were super supportive, and they always told me I could do anything. You're gonna be a good leader. You're gonna be a good woman. You're a great mother. Like they always took care of me. If I needed anything, they would show up and bring me things if I needed, even something as simple as groceries. Do you have groceries, my girl? Do you have this? Do you have that? And gifting me horses, making sure I learned how to ride a horse by the time I was 3. So I had a lot of really good males in my life.
That's awesome. And for the guys that are listening, Davidica's story right there is a huge freaking example of you might call it a sacrifice, fellas, but it's really what we need to do. We need to be mentors. We need to step up. We need to have the courage. And like she had said earlier, it's not about bravery and proving ourselves. We can always pull out the weapon, but it takes a bigger person to be responsible. And the men, we need to do this. And Davidica's explanation tells us why. Tell us a little bit about your musical journey and a little bit about your songs and how you got in. You mentioned that you listen to traditional songs, but you sing some rock and roll and some folk, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about folk, but yeah, definitely, definitely, rock and rock ballads. Oddly, my father is a singer, but he's a traditional singer and sings ceremony and powwow songs. My mother's a singer. My grandfather's, I think almost everyone in my family sings traditional or powwow. But when I was living with my mom, I was in the 2nd grade and I had the tried out for the choir in the 2nd grade, and I won the part of the little drummer boy. That was my first time.
That's cool.
Yeah, I was a little drummer boy, first time on stage, and my hair was actually like past my butt, like
Wow.
yeah, and so my mom had to like make a big bun and put this hat on me. Yeah, so I wouldn't look like a girl on stage, but um, and after that, and I remember feeling amazing being able to sing on stage, and I was only in the 2nd grade. So after that, I always tried out for choir, and then got into about 5th or 6th grade. And because I have a really good falsetto and I'm a soprano, so they ended up putting me in. One of the teachers, one of my singing choir teachers, asked me if I wanted to study operetta, and I didn't understand what operetta was. And it's not like opera; it's a little bit not as super strict, but it's still singing classical music and still doing kind of musical stuff. So I said yes, and I started training in operetta all the way until I graduated high school. So that was my training, and then I got pregnant at a really young age. I was 18 when I had my daughter, my eldest daughter. And at that time, I decided that I wasn't going to do anything but raise my children, just raise my kids. And I let go of everything because I'm also an artist, by the way. So I had a scholarship for art for the American Indian Art Institute, and I let that go too because I just wanted to focus on being a mother. So I did. But during that time of being a mother, my kids were maybe 12, 11 years old. Their father was in a band. My ex-husband, he was in a band, and I always played instruments also, but I always played bass instruments, like baritones and the trumpet. I mean, not bass, but brass instruments. So one day, his his bass player didn't show up for practice, and so they were like, "Oh, Davidica, you come over here and play these few chords so we can practice." And I was like, "Sure." So I played a few chords, and I was like maybe 25, 26. And so I said, all right, that's fine. And so off and on for a few years, I would just jump in practice with them. But during those years, I realized I loved playing the bass. Like I really loved it. But nobody would teach me because there was no females at that time on this reservation doing music at all. Like contemporary music. They were doing power music for sure. but nobody wanted to teach me. And so my ex-husband bought me a bass, and he bought me a book, and I taught myself. And just, and it was weird because I don't know how to explain it, but um I just don't like being told what to do. Honestly, that's the end. That's at the end of the day, that's what it is. So I didn't want to do exactly how the book said. So I just learned where to place my fingers, and I just did however I thought sounded good. And I would just mess around with the bass. And then I just started writing music. It was the death of somebody and learning her story. And then I wrote the song "Her Story" from that. And I wrote her song, I put her song, her life to a song. And that was my very first song I ever wrote.
Good for you. You know, the way you described it, it's a combination of, desire, spirituality, and heart. And then it's like this mixture, and you're creating music to leave, and you said, as a legacy. So writing songs is this process, and the songs are about life, like you mentioned. Then you co-wrote with your brother. Tell us about a couple of songs that you co-wrote and about your brother.
So the song, Aaron's song, we actually renamed to "I Walk Among the Dead."
Mm.
And my brother had brought me um just the music to he's like, I found this riff. I really like this riff because I've been teaching my brother how to play guitar, and he's really good. So, and he was only like 14, 15 at the time. And he said, and I want to write this song for Aaron. His best friend had found out he was adopted, and it was in a bad way that he had found out, in a heartbreaking way. And the family he was adopted to had turned their back on him, and
Mm.
so he had nowhere to go. And he was so freaked out because they turned their back on him because he was drinking and he wouldn't stop, and they didn't know what to do. So it was like a weird position to be in, but we let him move in with my mom and my brother. They were like, you can move in with us, of course you can. He grew up with my brother, he's his best friend. So he told his story to my brother, and then my brother called me over and he told his story to me. And so my brother said, I wrote this riff, and I want to make sure that we write him a song so he knows he's not forgotten, that he knows he's important. And because that's what he felt like he didn't belong anywhere, and he didn't, because his family didn't want him. And in Lakota way, our family is everything. So your family not wanting you is devastating. So we told him, we're writing this
Mm.
song for you. And he was, and and even today he shows people all the time, that's my song, that's my song. So it did what we wanted it to do, and encouraged him that way. And so I wrote all the lyrics to the song, and then put it together. And it's a really, even for me, really, it's super meaningful every time I sing it. And people will come up to me and go, that's me, I'm Aaron. That's who I am, and how did you know? And I'm like, wow, this is amazing, because I didn't know so many people would be able to connect with it, but they do. And it is about um his fight with alcohol, and it's about his fight with needing to belong and not understanding why he was pushed away. So it's a great song.
We're going to find out in a little while how we can go hear that song. But thank you for sharing that. Davidic, it's nice to know what's behind, the things that people do, and it gives it so much more meaning. And maybe it's a lesson for all of us when we hear a song or when we meet a person and they're different maybe from us, that we need to take a deep breath. And before we go stereotyping or passing judgment, we need to really dig deep and slow down a bit and not be so condescending or arrogant or angry. Attributes that nobody needs to do. You mentioned that we're all going through the same things in life, and I have to agree with you. And I think that we're looking for these connections. And what I like about women and leaders like yourself that have and exhibit courage and overcome the hard things in the world. I know, and I'm smart enough. I'm a little bit older than you, but I'm smart enough to know that you have wisdom that I can use. What do you
Thank
think?
you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And what do you think men can do from your perspective to be better men?
Well, I can tell you from my traditional teachings that they talk about, because the boys stay with the mom completely almost all the time with the mom until they're about 6 or 7 also. The reason they do this is because the boys have to learn compassion and empathy and uh like a different type of thinking, a different type of concern. So we as women, they tell us in Lakota way, women, we are innately given that because we have the power to create life. Because we have the power to create life, and because we're that vessel that life comes from, Tongashla has already implanted path, empathy, compassion, uh, nurturing, all those things innately in us, and that is why we are the way we are as women. But because the men, they were created and they can't create life, it doesn't make them less than. It just means that they have to do things to be in balance with us. So traditionally, the anipi we never went to. We weren't women never went into anipi because the anipi is a cleansing ceremony and a like re-energizing, rebalancing. It's a ceremony for that. And we as women, we have our moon every month, and so we go through this pain every month. We live this in our life all the time. This pain brings us humility and humbleness and pushing through, what we go through when we have our moon time. And I don't know if you know what moon time is, but it's our how you say it, period. I don't
It's
know.
your
Yeah, it
cycle,
sounds
yeah,
weird.
the
Yeah,
menstrual cycle.
yeah, menstrual cycle. So we as women, we naturally go through that our almost our whole lives. We have to push through pain. We have to understand emotional turmoil. We go through all kinds of things that the men don't go through once a month. It's not mandatory for them almost. So Tongashla, our creator, gave us these ceremonies for the men. Even Sundance was not for the women. Sundance was only for the men because the men had to go through this type of, because when you're in an ipi, it's super hot and it's uncomfortable. So you have to let go of your physical pain and physical struggles to focus on prayer only. The same way that women do. We go and take care of our family, take care of our home and everything, even though we're in pain and we're having a miserable, physically miserable time, we're still pushing through, and that gives us a different state of being, right? So they, to balance the men out with us, they gave the men the inipi so they could, and we didn't inipi once a week back in the day. It was maybe 2 3 times a year, but it gave the men that perspective so they could be in balance with us. So we both had the same experience and we're in balance. So when we talk about raising our boys, we talk about we're raising our boys to treat our daughters, treat the women the way they should be treated, and to be strong and courageous, but definitely having to give them love and being gentle with them and teaching them what it means to actually have unconditional love. And most men, because they're raised in this masculine misogynistic world,
Mhm.
don't get that. They don't get the years of ultimate unconditional love and compassion and gentleness and caring. And I've even heard a non-native person say we coddle our boys, and I was like, okay, then that's fine. If you think that's something bad, that's your business. But we're proud that we do take care of boys. My son was 21 before he served his own plate because he has all sisters, because we do take care of our boys that way. But the balance is that we take really good care of our men and our boys because they grow up to protect us and provide for us. They grow up to lead us, to be leaders, because like also that way, when Europeans came and stripped our our family of our men and brutalized them and put them in boarding schools, they took away their place in society. And that's when women started sundancing. That's when women started going to a nipi, because they had taken our men and broken them, where they didn't have their culture anymore. They didn't have their spirituality. And so we still today pray that one day it'll go back to the way it was, and we won't need to sundance, and women won't need to go to a nipi, because our men will stand up and take their place in society, and be that strong presence for us and be in balance with us women. So a lot of people who are like feminists or those, those type of mentality, they don't like to hear that because they think it's something bad. But in Lakota way, we don't think it's bad that the main positions in our community are supposed to be men, because it's a balance. Because the women, we're here to give them direction. We're not beneath them or anything like that, but we're here. We just have a different place in our society also. We have a different role in our community also than the men have. So we are, like I said, we my thought is, it's up to us women to raise good men. And people hate when I say that, when they're like, oh, these men are so messed up. I said, well, then what kind of moms raised them? What kind of mothers raise these boys? Because it's the mother's job to raise a good man. And people hate to hear that, but it's true. Because in Lakota way, they say, honestly, if a child is not around their father too much, it's okay. But if a father is not around their mother, then it's bad. A mother issues is way worse, honestly, than father issues,
Yeah.
because mothers give that connection, that deep connection of empathy, and that deep strength that men need, to our boys need to be good men. So even with my own son, and I only have one son, and even with him, I made sure that we raised him traditional, made sure that he understood that he is so sacred, made sure that he understood that he is so loved and cherished by me and his sisters and our family. And 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 it's so crazy, because as they grew older, my son took his place, where his sisters took care of him so well. And then as he got to be a man, he's taking care of his sisters and doing things for them that they need, and being real respectful to them, and making sure that the men in their lives are respectful to them too. So, it is that. It is, I believe, at the root of everything is how we raise our sons. And a lot of men who don't get that, they don't know that they can still change that as they become older.
Well, I'm glad that you're the mother that you are and the person that you are, and you've clarified some things for me. I love that hope of a world where things are in balance. And what I love about the things that you described today is that you're thinking about the future. That your concepts and your perspective are not nearsighted, and so thank you for that. I love the mutual respect that you describe between the sexes, and the sexes between each other. I love the spiritual and core values and living them, and actually not just offering lip service, but they become part of who you are and as a being. And again, it makes us realize that we need to just stop every now and then and take it all in, and maybe look at life in a different way, from a different perspective. So, a couple more things, Davidica. How can people that are listening go find your music?
Oh, on Reverb Nation. So if you just type in Reverb Nation and Davidica, it will pop up.
So there you go. Reverb Nation. You can hear Davidica's songs on that website. I'm going to ask you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, a lot of times because with my own brothers, because they didn't have a strong male in their life, my brothers. It's funny that I did, because we have different fathers. So my grandpas and uncles and cousins are not the same as theirs. because like I said, because we have different fathers and they're from a different tribe also. So it was a little different, but like with cultural things, like I taught my brothers how to dance, powwow dancing, which is a men's style, but I taught them how to dance traditional men's style. Or I taught my ex-husband how to grass dance. I taught my brothers how to hunt and how to shoot guns, how to ride horses. And traditionally, I hold a role that is held by a man normally. I'm the head of our Tokala society. It's a warrior society from my family, from my Tioshbe. And normally, traditionally, it's held by a man. But I was trained by my uncles and my grandpas, my cousins, to be a Tokala, because women are Tokalas also. We're also in a warrior society. We're just usually not the head of the society. So I always talk to people and say, I know one day I'm waiting for the young man to come to take my place. And so that way I can focus on other things. So at this time, trying to make sure that we're raising the young men to be strong warriors. So that way I can give up my position to a strong warrior. And a lot of people don't understand that, but I believe in this day and age, that the biggest how would you say, obstacle for us as human beings is that non-traditional thinking teaches separatism of everything, separatism of the sexes, separatism of sexual preference, of gender. It's like so much separatism, where in traditional way we focus more on a person's character than any of all this other stuff. And so we don't preach separatism. We don't teach that. We try to teach unity and togetherness, and why we should be depending on each other and why we should be there for each other. And I think that's the biggest thing, is trying to get our mentality away from that we shouldn't be fighting with the opposite sex. It's not a fight. Nobody's better than each other. We should be trying to be in balance with each other and try to encourage and support each other, because once the men are strong, the women are strong too. And once the women are strong, the men are uplifted. And we do need that. We do need that, because there's, like you said, when I go anywhere, like because I'm an activist also, it breaks my heart to show up and see that it's usually about 80% women and just a handful of men. And it makes me feel sad, because I do realize that the men are forgotten, and that we do as a nation need to continue to use all of our resources and all of our strength and all of our spirituality, and to lift the men back up so that we can be in balance.
Davidica, I love what you say. When the men are stronger, the women are stronger. And I was going to ask you, did you have a special mantra or a special axiom or a saying? And I would think that would be it. And your leadership is unquestioned, and your courage is unquestioned. And the story that you told us today, and the lessons to be learned and the things to think about are relevant. And I think they're not just relevant today, but I think they're relevant in the future from here on out. You've certainly given me a different perspective on a few things, and I thank you for that. Our guest today on Well has been Davidica Little Spotted Horse. She has had some phenomenal advice and lessons that we can all learn from. And I hope and I pray for the world that you described a few minutes earlier. And, if there's anything we can ever do, other than to continue to tell the stories and to support our friends in the nations, that's what we do. And we're going to continue to do it. And my heart goes out to your family. I know you're going through a personal thing now with your sister, and we just wish her the best, and I wish you the best. And I'm going to give you the final say, whatever you'd like to say. And by the way, please go to Reverb Nation and type in Davidica, Davidica, and so you can hear that song about walking among the dead, and the other songs that Davidica's put out there. And final thoughts, Davidica, on where we need to go, or anything you want to say.
I just want to say to the men out there to not lose faith, and to gather your courage, because at this time, especially in this time in history, um, we're always pushing women this, women that, women this, which I'm happy for. I love my sisters and I'm all for women empowerment. But I also, like I said, I completely believe in balance. And I believe that our men need to believe in themselves and know that nothing is permanent. Nothing, not a state of being, not a state of poverty, not a state of ignorance, nothing. Nothing is permanent. And in our Lakota way, we say, you're walking the red road, but if you fall off the road or you go stray, you can always come back. You can always come back. There's always a way to come back to where you need to be. There's always a way to make amends when something has happened that you didn't want to happen. There's always a way to pull yourself back out of things. And there's always definitely a way to relearn and heal from old patterns. And I think that's the thing that a lot of men don't realize. They think it's a weakness to restart, to give in to that something has gone wrong and then gather your courage and start again. But I believe that all men can do that. And I'm also like real heartbroken that most men are products of trauma and products of things that have happened bad to them. And you can heal from that. You can definitely heal from that. You don't have to live in that state of being. And it's not a weakness to get help and heal from that, because we need you men to be strong for us women.
Thank you, Davidica. And there you have it, man. It's never too late. Things don't last forever. And if you choose to turn things around, you have that power. Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Well. Without you, we don't exist. There is no show. We hope the men who joined us today learned some valuable tips to improve and not be ashamed to use them. Be the change, men. Set the example. Keep going. And for the women leaders out there, keep creating and keep helping us men to become even better men, more effective leaders. Thank you. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and lead.